Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anatomy of Adaptation. This is a podcast that aims to compare and contrast classic novels with their cinematic adaptations. I am your host, Nicolo Grasso, and I'm joined once again by my good buddy and film critic, Rafael Félix. How are you doing, Rafael? Have you read anything good recently?
Yes, I've read The Hours, which is very good.
Hey!
Which is actually very good. Yes, I've been reading quite some good stuff, especially for this podcast. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but this is bringing me towards quite a few good books, and this is just one another.
One of many, one of many. Yes, today we're doing this episode talking about the hours, of course. And I will just say that originally we were supposed to have on this episode American independent filmmaker Stephen Adam Rankovich, who unfortunately could not make it, but I wanted to give him a shout out and giving him some love because he's feeling a bit sick, unfortunately, right now. So we love you, Adam. Shame you couldn't be here with us, but we'll have you on this podcast sometime soon. People, go check him out. Go check out his movies. I know his feature debut, The Awakening of Lilith, is on Prime. It's on Tubi. It's like pretty much streaming everywhere you can find it. So do support actual, genuine, independent filmmaking. And on that note, today, yes, we are also talking about, once again, Rafael, whenever you're on the podcast, we always have to talk about some of the fun stuff. Some of the fun stuff. Because today we're getting very dark and depressive with Virginia Woolf. Today we're talking
Again.
about the 1998 book, The Hours by Michael Cunningham, and the 2002 film by Stephen Daldry.
Dear Leonard, to look life in the face. Always to look life in the face. And to know it for what it is. At last, to know it. To love it for what it is. And then to put it away. Leonard, always the years between us. Always the years. Always the love. Always the hours.
The Hours is a book by Michael Cunningham. It's a book about three women, and three women who are connected by Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. One storyline follows Woolf herself writing Mrs. Dalloway, trying to make sense of who the character is and where she's going to end up. One story is about Laura Brown in the early 50s, late 1940s, post war America, reading this book, a very depressed housewife with a child, currently very young, and also another one on the way. And the last story is about Clarissa Vaughan, who's also connected to the Hours, who's having her own little Clarissa Dalloway experience with life, and he focuses on a relationship with poet Richard, who's currently dying of AIDS. All three stories take place in one day, just like Mrs. Dalloway itself. Raphael, what were your thoughts on just this Mrs. Dalloway connection in a way? Because it's we can definitely focus just directly on the book itself. Also, the hours, of course, I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on it. But what's your history with Virginia Woolf? I know, of course, what your history is, but for the listeners here, the context
Yeah.
going into this episode.
Actually, this relationship started with The Hours, the film. There's I've seen the film a couple of years ago, randomly on TV, and I did love it. And I understood that there was definitely a connection to Virginia Woolf. So I kind of reverse engineered it and found that it was also based, not s- based, let's put it like that, but inspired and intertwined with stuff from Mrs. Dalloway. So then for this, I went to Mrs. Dalloway, which was a very interesting reading experience. Let's put it like that, because it was my first Virginia Woolf book, and as we talked, I don't think it was the best place to start. The way that Mrs. Dalloway is written, with through streams of conscious, very hard to follow at points, a lot of characters. It's very hard to follow and to capture it. But um, one thing, even if I didn't quite get the book, mostly because of my limitations, not the books, of course. But I would say that Virginia Woolf did have a beautiful capacity to turn the mundane into something of depth, of beauty, of inspiration. And I think a lot of the both of Mrs. Dalloway and The Hours is about that. It's the thing that we spend a day, and there's a day in the life of these characters, and The Hours and everything there is in them. There's some places of beauty everywhere. It just needs to be written and to be described. And there's a whole part of The Hours, both film and book, that touch that, and I'm pretty sure we will talk about that. But even if my relationship with Virginia Woolf as of now is limited to Mrs. Dalloway and kind of through the hours as well, um, I am I'm left amazed by how beautiful she can make the most mundane of things look.
Absolutely, yeah. This was, I would say, like my fourth Virginia Woolf book. I've read A Room of One's Own. I've read The Lighthouse, and I've read Orlando, which is currently my favorite of her books. Definitely something I would also do for the podcast, just to read it again, talk about those adaptations. Um, this is always very different, unfortunately, from those other books. I have to be perfectly honest. I enjoyed what I've read of Virginia Woolf so far. Mrs. Dalloway is probably the least interesting to me. I don't know if it's because of the way it was written and I was just not prepared for it. I don't know if it was because of the content itself. But yeah, I couldn't really connect to it on a deep level that made me love it, but I did appreciate it for sure. Um, and the beauty of Wolf's prose is still very much present. And I think what you touched on, I completely agree with. Um, that she really could find beauty in the mundane. She really could make the most seemingly banal things in life beautiful in a way that almost feels therapeutic for her, considering the demons that have followed her throughout her lives. Of course, we're not Virginia Woolf experts. There's people who know everything about her life story
Please, yes,
who can
don't
speak to
think
that.
of us like that.
Please don't. Please don't. Be kind. Be kind. Um, but I can see that being part of it. With someone who's depressed, they usually say even like try keeping a diary, try like finding something good every single day, and it feels borderline therapeutic for sure for her to start seeing the world this way and also telling other people. I was watching interviews with like someone who knew her before she died. So this man was like I want to say like 70 years old or 80 years old at the time of the interview in the early 2000s. Talking about Virginia Woolf, and he said that that's something that she told him when he was like a kid. She was like, try to write something about everything that happens in your day because there's always going to be something beautiful that happens in a day, which is lovely. And I do like that Michael Cunningham was very much touched by Mrs. Dalloway when he read it. He was young, he didn't really know Virginia Woolf even. But it opened him up. He was like, I don't know who this woman is. I don't know what's happening really in this story, but there's something beautiful here, something touching, something about the way that she's writing about this lady just going out to get flowers and she loves this guy. And there's talks about the war that just ended and all those very different narrative threads that kind of come together at the end in this party. And it just stuck with him, and then he just decided that he was going to write a book inspired by Mrs. Dalloway. So he started writing about Clarissa in New York, and it was pretty much a bit for bit repeat of Mrs. Dalloway. And he thought, what's the point of that? Like, there's already a Mrs. Dalloway. Why rewrite it once again? And what he did do was expand upon it. And he created this triple narrative, one that focuses, of course, on also Virginia Woolf writing the book in one day, like one of the days that she was starting to write the book, And then also on this Laura Brown character, who from an interview that I watched, I think you watched it as well.
Yes.
He talks about Laura Brown actually being inspired by his mother, and so there is this personal connection to him that we can definitely get into, like the
Hmm.
ties with the characters and Cunningham. But just like opening thoughts, I love this book. I think it might be my favorite first time read of the year. I found it to be absolutely beautiful, profound, emotional, genuine, heartfelt in ways I was not expecting. It's the quickest I've read any book this year that wasn't like meant to be a page turner thriller or anything like that. So I'm very, very excited to dive into this book. And of course, I'm just curious because, of course, The Hours was the original title of Mrs. Dalloway, and you already talked about the connection of like finding meaning and finding peace in a way of embracing the hours, because like every day is made up of hours and things that happen inside of those hours. What did you feel about those three women that are just going about their lives in this story? The structure is also very interesting, where each chapter kind of like jumps in time from one woman to the other. It telegraphs it with the title chapter called title name. How did you feel about it? Did anything stand out?
I wasn't particularly surprised about the structure itself, um, which I think is a, a plus on the film, which we'll be talking about later, because I've seen the film first. I don't think you had at that point. Had
I
you
had
watched it?
actually.
Oh,
I'd
you
seen
actually had.
it
Okay.
2021, I think.
Okay.
I wrote down in Letterboxd. Yeah.
Okay. So the structure itself, I was kind of expecting it to be cross-cutting between these three women, but what I felt was that once again, going back to the hours, we spend a lot of time in the mind of these characters, and Michael Cunningham as Virginia Woolf focused a lot on trying to capture everything that these people were feeling towards flowers, a cake,
Mhm.
some gingerbread that Virginia wanted to a particular lunch with her sister Vanessa Bell. Um, that kind of attention to detail makes these three different worlds very livable and make these characters very genuine, as you put it, and then you spend a couple of time with the book. It's not a particularly long book by any means, but you spend a lot of time in the book trying to understand how this will intertwine,
Mhm.
how these stories will eventually connect. But even before that, I think every bit of this story, I think each of us will have a kind of a character that we prefer. It always happens with this kind of book that you have some excerpts that you kind of like from this character and you want to follow this character a bit more. I definitely have a preference on this book in particular. But even in the other parts, uh, there's a way that he talks about almost being alone in a crowd, which is something that
Mm.
goes through the all of them, but even maybe more described on Laura Brown. The sense of loneliness of trying to find your place, and even if you have kind of everything around you, like all the conditions are there for you to strive, you still don't, and how painful that kind of is, the realization that you have everything that you could have asked and it's still not enough, and it's still not what you want. It's something that was kind of imposed by different circumstances. So I think that the things that unite these three characters, even the narrative intertwines that you get later, but even the feelings that you have from these three characters are very similar but told in very different ways and through three different stories. And I found it very moving, very depressing at some points, but
Yes.
still with a lot of passion for life, trying to grab your life, trying to grab the hours, as the book puts it at one point, that I found deeply beautiful. That even something like suicide is shown as almost like an act of self-love, of
Hmm.
appreciation for your life and what you can endure and what you cannot. And this goes a little bit back to the Virginia Woolf's suicide note to Leonard, which is read almost verbatim on the opening of the book on a prologue. Um, and yeah, I think it's very beautiful. It's very damning at some points. It's depressing as well. Um, but as you, I do share your feelings that it was one of the most brilliant things I've read this year.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's not an easy read, emotionally speaking. It gets very dark, especially with what you mentioned about suicide. Um, because you have those, of course, it opens with Regina Woolf drowning herself in this very shallow river, which is even more
Yeah,
disturbing. I think of everything, and she was a good swimmer as well. And there's like all those a very tragic. Um, and then it's repeated through, of course, outside of the opening, it's repeated in Wolf's story as she's thinking, okay, this Mrs. Dalloway is going about her day, but at the end of the day, she has to die and she has to kill herself because there has to be a suicide of sorts in this story. There has to be, it's almost like the suicide itself gives meaning
yeah. You
to
have to
her
appreciate
life.
life exactly
Yes,
because the
yes.
other characters need to appreciate life.
And that's what you need. And then, of course, you have Laura Brown, who's just so depressed of being a housewife, potentially partly because she's also closeted at a time when she cannot be open because she got into a marriage just because she felt like she had to. There's this entire conversation about post-war America where some of these women almost felt like they had to give love to these soldiers
To
coming
these
back, to
men, yeah,
these
yeah.
veterans, um, just because they saw the worst things possible in the world. So, well, the least we could do is just give them a happy, oh, the kids and the suburbs, and it's all lovely. But what about them? Like, what about these women? What about their own desires? What they wanted something different out of life. And of course, she goes on this journey of attempting suicide inside a hotel room. Um, and then, of course, in the Clarissa uh, Vaughan story at the end, well, not at the end, but like in modern times, um, we do actually reach a suicide. It's not her own, of course, but that of the writer, Richard the poet, which is kind of mirrored with the suicide of the poet inside Mrs. Dalloway, which is one of
Yeah.
many intentional connections that Michael Cunningham draws with the novel.
It's also the
Some
war element.
the war element, of course, like there's all of those different ripples through time and space in a way. Um, and yeah, I don't know if you had something to say about that.
Um, an interesting part of reading Mrs. Dalloway after reading The Hours, which was
Hmm.
what I did, um, is looking at the moments where Michael Cunningham slightly put elements of Mrs. Dalloway here and there. Some much more clear than others. You have
Hmm.
narrative elements that are actually there. So Septimus Warren Smith also flies from a window, as you get on the hours with Richard Brown. You have the war element again, which is a big part of Mrs. Dalloway and the Septimus character, and then it comes back here through Laura Brown as well, and through just what you said about the husband coming back, and she does as Kitty, the other character, not Kitty. Kitty's on the film. I can't remember the name on the book of the character of the neighbor.
Yeah, yeah. The
Maybe it's
friend
Kitty.
who comes. Yeah.
Yes, but both of them are in unhappy relationships, very well developed with very little words on the book, and unhappy relationships because they came from the war. And yes, as you told, we need to give them some love. Mrs. Dalloway, Clarissa in here as a gay relationship, and there is definitely an element of Mrs. Dalloway that is from a lost love that Mrs. Dalloway had on her youth with Sally Seaton, on Mrs. Dalloway, the book from Virginia Woolf. So there's a lot of little elements that go through Michael Cunningham's book that mirror Virginia Woolf's, and it's almost like the fun part of reading both of them. He's trying to find even the innuendos in some of the stuff. Some stuff that I just suggested that
It's connect the
almost,
dots type.
yes, exactly, and they actually get a bit of life in Michael Cunningham's. Even the relationship for Blair Brown with a neighbor, that kiss that they had, the just that little moment kind of encapsulates what Mrs. Dalloway in the book felt early in her teenage years. So there's just very different moments in Michael Cunningham's book that I found very beautiful to compare with Wolf's.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also very fun to see how Cunningham was inspired by Mrs. Dalloway throughout his career, and he writes this book that's about people getting inspired by Mrs. Dalloway, the book itself,
Yeah,
and also includes Virginia Woolf getting inspired to write Mrs. Dalloway from her own life and what she's experiencing. And it becomes this inception type of like
yeah,
getting deeper and deeper, like the falling into this spiral of what's inspiring what, like which I always find to be absolutely beautiful, and I
yeah.
love that he doesn't shy away from that. I think
He
I don't
does
know if it's
embrace
some
it. Yeah,
he embraces it, yeah, in a way that worked for the time. I don't know if nowadays someone could get away with that. I think nowadays we've seen it so many times of trying
yeah,
to reinvent in a modern key, in a modern. It's like, oh, let's take this classic novel and just change things or gender swap it or whatever, update it. Um, and I don't know if it would be possible. Maybe it will be. I mean, you can never say never. But to reach this type of success, to also win a Pulitzer Prize for this book by by essentially remaking something that was already beloved to begin with, but just making it your own.
yeah,
And I think you touched also on the queerness of the story as a whole. Is like Regina Woolf herself was complicated, never openly gay, lesbian, but she had relationships with people, like historically so confirmed, um, especially with the writer Vita, of course. But I think that's the more contemporary element that Cunningham brings that works especially the best in focusing on these queer characters in the kiss that Laura Brown gives to Kitty, if that was the name in the book. I honestly don't remember if it was as well, but it is in the film. Just that moment of the kiss is very beautiful. And of course then you see in the modern times where queerness is more accepted in some ways, where Clarissa can be openly bisexual and then currently be living with a woman for the past 15 years, 10, 15 years or so. But then to also have the tragedy of AIDS in a way that felt so refreshing compared to like the stereotypical way that AIDS is approached. It's not romanticized in any way. It doesn't turn this up into a book about that, which I also respect a lot. Um, but it manages to touch on the loneliness of the writer, which mirrors the loneliness of all the other characters in this book. You have Richard, who's living by himself in this shitty, tiny, crowded apartment, barely sees anyone, barely has even any memory of what's happening when. Just like time is a jumbled
yeah,
mess to the point that he already thinks he's like, oh, I'm seeing in the future. I've already seen the party that people are giving in my honor. I don't even need to attend it. I've already seen it. I've experienced it. I don't want to get there. Um, and it leads to so much also of the melancholy sadness of this book because it's also often looking at the past, which is emblematic of narrating a person's day, which made me wonder, honestly. I don't know if you felt like this When I was reading it, I thought, could there be like a very shitty, banal day of my life where if someone like looked at it from beginning to end, they would actually understand so much of my past?
Probably
I-
would. I
Probably.
mean, it probably
If
would.
Michael Cunningham narrated it or
Yes,
something.
if Michael Cunningham narrated it, and even I mean, Clarice, Mrs. Dalloway from Wolf, it happens all in one day, but not quite because you get a lot of time jumps, and
Right.
you go back to her youth, and at one point she's 18, and I'm like, why is she 18 now? But wait, does she have a daughter? I mean, it's just an interesting book to follow. I'm sorry. But then you get to Cunningham's, and it's once again that intention of picking every action that you do, and it does have a meaning, and it does have a past, and it's coded in something that happened to you before. So even the way that you approach, the way you say hi to people, the way you meet people in the street, and you interact with someone, all of that tells a little bit about yourself. And if you are a good writer, as Michael Cunningham obviously is,
We can say
you
that, yeah.
you can pick up on this stuff and expand on it. I think that is one of the most beautiful things in this book, is that you know so much about these characters with so little, with just a day, with doing such banal things. She's making a cake, she's picking up flowers, she's trying to get to London, and stuff like that, or write a novel.
Hmm.
Well, not that writing a novel is banal, but the act of actually putting words is banal.
And
So
thinking through it and like part of the
yeah,
creative process,
these
yeah.
actions always tell a story. So yeah, I would say that that maybe is the beauty of it, of all of our life is encapsulated in a day. Oh, I mean, all of the life that you have lived until today is encapsulated today, and is present in all of the hours that you spend on it. And the book is very much about it. So yes, I think that someone talented can make a day out of my shitty office life, or of your editing days, even if it's spent on a computer. I think there's beautiful stories to tell about that as well. You just
Could
need a
be
proper writer, I would say.
could be a fun like writing exercise. I bet there is like some school out there, where they do like writing schools or whatever,
Yeah,
literature schools, where one of the exercises could be just narrate your day. I think that's one of the most basic things. Of course,
yeah, I
you
would
also
say
learn
yeah.
when you are learning a new language. It's always the moment you can talk about your day and what you've done. So it's a sign you know the language. Now, actually, I'm very curious as well now because you did mention before that you have a favorite character. Which one is your favorite character?
It is Virginia Woolf, of course.
Hey,
Yes, it is. I think the
the ultimate drama
passages,
girl.
the ultimate drama guy, and my God, do I connect with that at this point of my life? But I think that I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that it's the character that technically we know that existed. The other ones are fictional characters. Even Lara Brown, to a degree, it's a fictional character, even if it's based on Michael Cunningham's mom. But I thought Virginia was an interesting character because even if I haven't read Virginia Woolf, I'm quite aware of her, and I'm quite
Hmm.
aware of what she was and how she felt. It's one of those that you kind of, if you go on this world of cinema, of literature, you kind of know people even if you haven't read something of them, or even haven't watched a film from it, or you have the
Yeah.
expectation of it. And what this kind of told me is that this is a character that I only imagined that existed, this Virginia Woolf. And now she's speaking like I kind of expected her to do. But it's at the same time very grounded, and very not painted as a particularly nice person. He's a very considered person to some people. especially the ones that she loves. But she's not the
Yes.
most particular, amazing people, especially with staff. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, the house help
Um,
is not
but
appreciated.
there are moments, and when we talk about our favorite passages from the film, mine come from this, from Virginia. Um,
Okay.
the way Cunningham wrote that, and the way that he could capture the way that Virginia Woolf looked at something that was kind of mundane and banal and unimportant, and made it actually important, and gave it some degree of um, like importance. Yeah, that's kind of the word. This does matter because this exists. So if this exists, it does have something of importance to the world. And the way that he captured that with the way he wrote this version of Virginia Woolf really, really, really touched me. And I was always expect, even if I really liked the passages from Clarissa Vaughan or our Mrs. Dalloway here,
Hmm.
Laura Brown a little less so, but I was always expecting to go back to Virginia because this is the story that I want to follow.
Yeah, and there's one of my favorite parts of the book. I hope it's not. Well, it might be actually one of the passages is, but everything about the burial of the little bird when the sisters come to visit Virginia, and there's the three children. Um, there's this part where she talks about she's just witnessing the little kid, the daughter of her sister, like delicately, gently placing the little dead bird on the it's cute and everything. Well, the two children, the two men that she has birthed, um, are completely instantly disinterested. It's like it's done, it's dead, whatever. Just like keep on playing like with fake swords and sticks or whatever. Um, and all the musings that she has about the roles of women and men and the way that they are keeping the preciousness and partaking in these rituals of life and death and all of that was really beautiful, in a way that one can almost forget you're reading fiction, right?
Yes,
Like all
that
this is
is
fictional,
exactly
but
what I thought. Yes,
yeah, I need to remind me every time I had to stop. I was like, oh yeah, I'm reading Michael Cunningham's thoughts and feelings about those things. I'm not reading Virginia
Virginia.
Woolf's and Laura
Yes.
Brown's like diaries,
Do
which is
you
a
have a
testament to his
favorite one
writing.
though?
Of the trio, I surprisingly really liked and connected to Laura Brown, actually. The entire section when she gets to the hotel
Yeah.
and what she's thinking going through that and like getting really really close to overdosing on pills and letting it go and just thinking about the fragility of life and how it's can be over so quickly in a way that she almost finds empowering. I should have written down the actual quote from that passage. It's not the quote I saved for this, but there was one part about that really touched me. It's like almost finding empowerment in the knowledge that suicide is always at hand and life is so fragile, which again ties with the little dead bird, of course, and the actual suicide in the Clarissa Dalloway, the Clarissa Vaughan section. But yeah, no, I really really like that, um, which I was not expecting, to be honest. If you told me beforehand going into this book, like which character are you gonna probably like the most or connect with the most, I don't think I would have picked her, probably. But no, it was very surprising. But honestly, everything that it's something that's also exclusive to the book. And after this, I want to jump into the movie. But the character of Lewis Waters is
Hmm.
so much more fleshed out
Yes.
inside the um, Clarissa part because my God, like everything about him and his relationship with Richard and their relationship with Clarissa herself, it's so much richer and it's so again, I don't know Cunningham's life, but again, it did bring parts of his mother into into Laura Brown, sorry. And one of the narratives, like things that they talk about in the book, is how Richard wrote a novel that's essentially a semi-fictional
Yeah.
retelling of Clarissa's life
Hmm.
and his own life, to the point that most people who have read the book, which is not the most engaging novel, they they still think that she's actually exactly as she is in the book. And again, it goes into this life imitating art, imitating life, and just those things transpire and move from one place to the other. So everything about that was very, very charming and full of just food for thought, um, about inspirations, about bringing parts of yourself into your art, putting it there, and also just the passage of time. Like these people who are in their 50s, going on 60, getting old, looking back at their younger years, and how the moments when they were happy, thinking this is when we're always going to be happy in the future, and this is how it's going to be, actually wasn't. Like that was the happiness itself. That was the joy they had in life. It's gone. And which is very much a young person's perspective. We're starting to get older over the years, and I'm starting to feel some of that
Yeah.
energy and some of that love and some of that passion start to dwindle. And I'm thinking, damn, when I was like 20 or 21, living some experiences, thinking this is so beautiful, I can't wait to experience it again. But like, no, it's not. It's in the past.
Yes.
It's gone.
That's it.
It's
Now
there.
you only have the sensation that you actually lived it.
Yes. Now you only have, and that's also something that like you only will be able to re-experience the memory of it.
Yeah.
You can never experience
The
it,
feeling again. Yeah.
the feeling in the fullest. Which is probably why food is so comforting in a way. You can actually experience food. Doesn't necessarily have to be one to
Mm.
one, but it's the only way you can actually bring yourself back to some times and place. You have Proust's Madeleine. We're getting sidetracked here, but it's tied into that. Those feelings, those emotions. How even just seeing a person like in this novel, just seeing Richard or thinking about Richard
Yeah.
can bring back those memories to Clarissa and to Lewis. I think this is a good point to also start talking about the film. Uh, of course, Pulitzer Prize winning book. It's gonna have to be adapted. Cunningham himself was not expecting people to be interested. He was not even thinking of how this could be adapted into a movie. But of course, 2002, Stephen Daldry directed the film. He managed to get an A-list cast. I mean, this was a great cast for
Packed
back
cast.
then.
Packed cast.
Julianne Moore, Nicole Kidman, and Meryl Streep as the three leading ladies. We also have Stephen Delane, you have John C. Reilly, Toni Collette, Ed Harris, Alison Janney, Jeff Daniels, Claire Danes, Margot Martindale in a side role. Like it's people, it's actors, like A-list actors, popular then, even more popular now, to be honest. Some of them. Um, what are your thoughts? Well, actually, what were your thoughts watching The Hours the first time, and what was like revisiting it now after having read the book?
I think the first time I was almost blindsided by it.
Okay.
Mostly because I put the film not knowing much of it, and I was crying in the first 2 minutes. So I was like, okay, yes, this will definitely work. This will be something else. And I found it very almost confusing to a degree at first because the film does a great job in the opening like 5 to 10 minutes with that montage and those and that cross cutting that he does between the three women doing the same things, picking up flowers, waking up in the morning, and stuff like that to connect these people. But at that point, I didn't know how they were connected or even they. And the film is not particularly short. It's 2 hours, and the book is not that long as well. I know we were
Yeah.
talking about three different stories, but still, I don't think it's too long. But 2 hours for this book, I think it was appropriate, but it's not short. So you spend a lot of time trying to connect these stories, but once again, as in the book, they work separately very well. These three characters are very interesting to follow. They are portrayed by amazing actresses. They are on the top of their game, the three of them.
Oh yeah.
And even if you're not connecting to the story, which I was, you can connect to a performance. Sometimes you kind of need that. You kind of need that actor to take you on that journey, and almost like in a trust exercise, because I'm
Hmm.
not getting this, but I'm feeling the performance, so I can go with it. And it was a film that I felt it was being carried very much in the beginning by the power of those characters and of the musical score that I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about.
Philip Glass, my man.
Yeah, what a man. But getting through to the end and having those revelations in the end was very narratively. It was interesting, but it was not what connected me to the film. What connected me was actually the way that those three characters behaved through the film, not how they were connected. Because not having read the book or wasn't aware that it was based on Mrs. Dalloway, I almost felt like there was a spiritual connection between these people, but I couldn't connect them in, how can I put it, in like a narrative way, of like these three characters are almost like doing, it's almost like a cannibalist act, both the book and the film. It's what you told me, it's the process of creation, going through it, and then that inspires one of the characters that it's also in the film, but that person in the film is being inspired by the book from Virginia Woolf, which is also in the film. And that
Hmm.
part was not present with me in the first time I've watched it. Now, on rewatch, having know the book and Mrs. Dalloway, both the hours and Mrs. Dalloway, it's a very interesting exercise to do. To now have the idea of these characters and connect them through the visual medium. And what I thought is that even if the book is, I mean, spot on, I would say, I think spotless. um, I hardly think you could make a much better adaptation that they did here. I think it's I can't find a way for that book to be adapted better than how they did it here.
That's a fair statement, I would say. It was something I was thinking about rewatching it as well. Um, because how can you even adapt, differently adapt this book, right? It reminds me recently, there was also an episode that we did in the podcast with the good Jack Luke Sharp talking about Cloud Atlas.
Mm,
And that's not too different from this one in the
yes,
sense of how Cloud Atlas is, the book itself is slightly more linearly told, but the film goes into this more overt intercutting. And it's something that I really, really like here in The Hours. I really appreciate how they almost turned this into a thriller of sorts.
yeah,
In the way of like you don't know how these women are connected. It's like what's gonna happen next? Like what's there gonna be a revelation? It just keeps moving from one to the other, and the entire opening is brilliant. After
yes,
the prologue of just like the music swells and you have Virginia Woolf waking up, Clarissa preparing the thing, and Laura waking up the kid and prepare and just waking up from the bed, and it's the husband's birthday, and just I have to go get the flowers for the party. It's just like just puts you into that mood.
perfect. This
Um,
opening scene, amazing stuff.
it's great. It's great. I did the first time I watched this movie. I really liked it. I did not know Philip Glass composed the score. I think that was my review on Letterboxd. Was like, had I known he had written the score, I would have watched this way sooner because I love me a Philip Glass soundtrack. I think he's genuinely a brilliant composer and pianist as well. I love a good pianist. But I was rewatching this film now, and I found myself unable to remove the shadow of the book from it, or like remove this from the shadow of the book. Um, we I- we talked about like one of the last conversations we had was about Solaris, and there was definitely something about having read the book that could inform the films, the two adaptations, but they still really, really worked on their own to the point that I could separate them. Watching the hours, I got to the end and I thought this was very good, but the book is just on another level. And I think my main problem can be narrowed down to the year of release, 2002. This is prime Oscar bait for the
Yes,
time. Miramax production, Philip Glass score. This trio of actors at the time, they were at the top of their game, as you mentioned. But this film does fall into that slight melodrama of the time, of like the sweeping truth, the sadness of these three women. Oh my god, and they're crying so much. Can't you see how sad they are? They're just tearing their eyes out. You know, it's a bit much at some
yeah.
points.
It's a very
um
2000s film. It does feel like a
yes,
2000s, early
yes.
2000s film. Yeah.
Again, it worked because it was nominated for like 7 Oscars or something like that. Nicole Kidman famously won the only Oscar of her career for playing Virginia Woolf
By a nose.
by a nose, which is
We need to talk
outstanding.
about the nose. Yeah,
Do you like the prosthetic?
it takes a little bit, I think.
Okay,
Yes, it does take a
okay.
little bit because it's very uncanny. It's
Mm,
very noticeable, but it's just the nose. That's the thing. There's nothing else. It's just the nose, and I think it works, but it does take a little time for you to actually. Okay, I've eased up to this. This now does work. I don't think they tried to recreate in any means Virginia Woolf by even by voice. Nicole Kidman said it herself. She didn't try
rightfully
to.
so,
Yeah,
even.
they didn't try to, and I think that that's a completely fine decision. I think
Have
they
you
used
listened to the
the.
voice, actually? Did you listen to Virginia Woolf's voice?
I haven't. I haven't.
It's
Actually, I
very
haven't.
specific.
But I
If you
will.
can find it,
Yeah,
I think it was something on YouTube. It's
that's
like
why
it would have been so weird, a 2 hour movie with that
with
voice.
maybe yeah that's why Nicole Kidman said that she couldn't do it that voice because it would just sound comical, and I think
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman is a very I feel like she's a very sensitive actress, so I think that she would make the right decision on this particular thing. So I would say that that is a good point, but the nose itself, I think it was almost like for Nicole to actually help her get into character more than actually mimic Virginia
Hmm.
Woolf. Um, because I think it does take a little bit for me to okay, there's that's the nose. Yeah, that's the nose. And like from the third time that she appears, okay, maybe I'm fine with this. It looks weirder in some shots than it does in others because
It
I know
reminded me,
they did CGI on it at some points as well.
which looks good actually. Like
No,
generally
it
speaking,
does, it
this
does.
movie
Yeah, yeah.
looks great, but it reminded me of Bradley Cooper in
In
Maestro.
Maestro, yeah, yeah. It's kind of because Leonard Bernstein didn't have that nose, but it does help the performance, and I kind of understand the way they feel about it. So I'm fine with
But
it. It just takes a little
uncanny,
bit.
uncanny for Virginia Woolf, Nicole Kidman is the right way, because even watching it, I know I'm watching Nicole Kidman,
Yeah, with the
and I
nose,
see
you
her
see
in the
Nicole
eyes,
Kidman
but the
and the
nose is
nose.
there.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't match the rest of the face. It's very weird.
yeah. But again, I do think she's very good in this
Yeah,
film. I think she's just generally she's usually great. Um,
she's the
although
standout for me in this. In this, she's the standout from the three of them.
yes, yes, I have to say I remembered liking Julianne Moore more
Me too.
in here, which is not to say that she's bad. And just generally revisiting this movie was bizarre because to be honest, I remembered very little about it. Like going into it, having read the book, I could just think about the book, and I was like, yeah, I remember like a couple of moments. I remember, of course, Richard's suicide. I remember the opening montage. I remember those key moments, but I didn't remember like what was going to be present from the
Yep.
book and what wasn't going to be present. And generally speaking, it's the same story. It's not like, oh my god, there's major changes. It's why did it do that? Why did
Mm,
Clarissa throw herself off the end?
yeah,
There's nothing like that.
there's nothing like that.
There's no.
I think
Regina
there's
Wolf
some.
is alive.
I
What?
think there's some omissions that I think it hurts the film. I would say.
Yes.
I think there is. We didn't talk about that in the book parts, but there is a whole segment of Clarissa Vaughn and Mary Cruel, which is a girlfriend from Julia, her daughter. which kind of puts it's a very interesting dialogue and inner dialogue from those two different characters, because it's like a modern feminist,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like from working class and very activist way, and Clarissa Vaughn, which is kind of living the New York life that heterosexual couple would be living in the same places with the same kind of decoration and stuff like that. She's pretending to. It's not the word that she's pretending, but her sexuality is not part of what she is, of her identity. It's kind of blended in
Mm-hmm.
all the different stuff. And Mary Cruel doesn't agree with that, and it's a shock of generations of ways of thinking queerness, of ways of thinking feminism, which I found very interesting, because you have Mary Cruel on one side, but then you have the inner dialogue of Clarissa Vaughn, which also kind of feels that she is making a disservice as well to
Mm-hmm.
being a feminist or being queer or anything like that. She does have kind of a guilt of, I mixed with the bourgeoisie from New York, and now I'm just this. I've became an heterosexual woman in a homosexual relationship,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and something like that.
She's
Uh,
just boring.
she's just
Just put
boring.
it
Yeah,
plainly.
it's she's just boring, and she feels like, especially looking at Mary Cruel, which is an activist, and it's portrayed as explosive, and she wants to make the world a better place. She wants to go to manifestations, stuff like that, at parades and the whole thing. And that clash is very interesting. It's missing from the film, but even with this stuff that missing, the thing that I really dislike they changed was the Louise Waters
Yes,
discussion with Clarissa Vaughn, and I think you would agree with me.
I completely agree with you. I think that that was the part I disliked the most rewatching because I did not remember that. Um, Even recently, I've become very, I don't know if fascinated is even the right word, but let's use it for now. I've become fascinated by books that feature men crying. Just
Okay.
very recently, I read the book. I've been reading a lot of Georges Bataille, French perverts
French
from the
pervert
20th
put
century.
it on the
Uh,
poster.
that's like this is me, the critical thinker here. You know, it's like, oh yeah, French Bataille, famous pervert. No, I love his writing. I think, of course, very much of his time. Some things need to be taken with a little bit of context. You know, there's misogyny present. It's not perfect. He's still a French philosopher from the 1940s and 1950s.
You can't expect much from the French.
Indeed, indeed. But I was reading the book during my summer holiday. I was reading Blue of Noon, and one thing that I really loved about that book is that the main character cries so much. It's almost comical to a point. But I was just like, oh my god, I'm not used to reading just men crying and being like, I'm really fucking sad. And like this thing happens, and I'm just sad. And I'm depressed and I'm crying about it. It's very unusual. You get to the chapter, which I want to say it might be just one big chapter, correct?
Yeah,
When
it
Lewis
is.
Water goes to visit Clarissa, and then
Yes.
as he's about to leave, the daughter comes, and that's when Mary comes in. It's like this whole chapter was just brilliant from beginning to end. And he's the one who gets emotional thinking about Richard and having this conversation with Clarissa, which I found to be very moving. And I like how Clarissa has this very
Calm.
calm
Yeah.
detachment, but still wants to be comforting and warm with him. In the movie, it's the Meryl Streep show. She has to cry. We
Of
need
course
that
she
big
does. We
moment of
need
her
that.
crying.
It's the Oscar clip.
It's
You
the
need.
Oscar clip.
It's even framed like that. It's. Oh my god! It's
You
so.
can see it in the Dolby
You
Theater.
can see it in the Kodak theater.
Just like
Oh my god.
Meryl Streep, the hours. It's like,
It,
because
it's
happiness, I thought that was the one moment where just happiness, but then it just, oh my god. Again,
I hated
it's
that
Meryl
scene.
Streep.
I really
She's
hated
good.
that scene.
She's good. But it's
Um,
such a disservice to the character because again they
yeah.
get Jeff Daniels, who's really freaking good.
Yes, he is.
And I saw him. That was like I forgot that was him. Really good casting. really good casting. It works. Also, side note, Ed Harris, brilliant.
Yes.
Big Ed Harris fan. But this is present throughout the film. And again, it sounds like I'm being very critical. Let's say it's tough love because I still really enjoyed myself watching this film. There are still a couple of parts that got to me emotionally that almost made me tear up. Just from the opening of like the letter of Virginia Woolf, and there goes like, "Oh fuck, it's happening again." I don't know
Yeah.
if it was working with you as well. Um, but then you get to those moments that are very potent in the novel. The other one that I was like, doesn't really work for me fully as it does in the book is the argument that she has, that Virginia Woolf has with Leonard at the train station. In the film, it gets so shouty, it's so loud, which is also just very non British. Especially imagine in the 1922, they would not have been shouting that loudly at the train station. But the way that it's written in the book, which is almost verbatim, I want to say, like there are many parallels in the dialogue. It felt familiar listening to it, but it was taking me a bit out of it. Stephen Delane, I think, is a very good actor. It's a bit too out there, but I feel like you might feel differently actually about
Yeah,
this.
in this scene I do, because I would say that that is my favorite scene of the film.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, and you are completely correct. It gets very shouty. It gets very Oscar-y. It's fair. It is very fair.
He
Uh,
wanted his moment on the screen, didn't
yes,
get
it did.
it.
But that's the thing, because I've always felt, both reading the book and watching the film until that point, that Leonard was always the calming presence in Virginia's life. He
Hmm.
was always the one that tried to save her in every single way possible. And that whole sequence, it's beautiful to me, honestly, because there is a point where it's just the frustration of him trying to do everything he can to save her, but at some point he does understand that he will not be able to. It just the acceptance of it. And even my favorite passage from the film is on that scene, but I think we can
Hmm.
save that for later. But all of that, where Virginia says that her life is her own, and she must be able to take action through her life, and Leonard can't live her life can't live Virginia's life for her, because he says, "Oh, but I have to live with your demons," and Virginia says, "Yes, but I have to live with them as well."
Hmm.
I think it's a moment of realization, mostly for Leonard, because I think at that point, if he kind of understood for good that he was working a hopeless case in a degree, and all he could do was try. And I think the acting in that scene from both of them is honestly beautiful. I think that scene works very, very well for me. Uh, the one we were talking about previously, it was my least favorite of the. I kind of hated that scene, if I'm being honest. I really, really dislike that scene profoundly. Um, but that scene in the train station, I would go back to it and just listen to the dialogue in it, because I think it's beautiful. I think there is most of it is verbatim from the book, but I think there's some David Ayer sprinkles on it as well, um, and I really, really like it.
You said David Hare, and
Hare,
I
not the
yeah.
other one. Yes, sorry, not the
Yeah, the
other
screen.
one.
There was one more. Even I was watching one of the documentaries, and someone was like, "Yeah, the screenplay by David Ayer."
David
And
Ayer,
this
yeah,
is,
I had the same feel. What?
I think by the time this episode comes out, I can even say I've been on the Uncut Gems podcast. They're doing a David Ayer month in September, and they talked about his feature debut yesterday at the time of recording. So I was like, "What the fuck? I don't remember
Yeah,
him writing the
writing
hours."
this. Yeah,
Very
maybe he's a
very
genius. He's a
versatile.
closeted genius.
Oh, he's still in the closet, in my opinion. He's
Yeah.
gone back into. He made the end of plot, and then
Never
he
get
closed the
out.
door again. He needed the comfort. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, and another
Um,
podcast.
in another podcast. Go listen to our friends at the Uncut Gems Pod, please. Hi, Jakub, and hi, Randy, if you're listening. But yes, I get it. No, no, it makes sense. I think the way that they also portray the relationship generally does work very well.
Hmm. Yeah.
In the film, it's which is something that I also admire in the book, just generally. Leonard and Virginia, it's a needed conversation, the one that they have at the train station, which unfortunately doesn't lead anywhere. I think that's the
Mm.
tragedy, and it's something that I really love just structurally, which I don't know, like probably someone might have tried doing it differently, maybe. But I can also see a picture of a version of this movie and book where it ends with the suicide of Virginia Woolf. And I think there is something about opening with that that's
Yeah.
very intentional. And it's this dark shadow that's just cast over everything that's happening. In the movie, again, they play it a bit more like a like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next, thrillery, light, very light thriller
Yeah.
vibes to it. I was like, the shadow of the suicide is always present. In the book, not so much. The darkness of it is present, but it never feels threatening in a way. It's not like you're actively waiting for suicide to happen, even though you have the build up to Laura Brown going to the hotel. You have Richard and everything that he's talking about with Clarissa telling her like, I'm alive only for you, just for your
Yep.
benefit, which again mirrors the relationship between Leonard and
And
Virginia. Like
Virginia.
all those arguments, and again, it's the brilliance of it. It's a mirror, it's a parallel, but not cheaply so.
No, 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 no,
Like
not
it's
at all.
not like it's trying intentionally to be a mirror one to the other, and just like they're saying the same things but slightly different. But the core of it feels close to it because at the end of the day, it is a movie about and a story about life and the choices we make in life and the passage of time and the inability of changing anything in the past. In a way, even the future, you could say, I almost see that with the opening, the inevitability of like we know where Virginia is going to go. So even everything that's happening in that one day can be emblematic, but one day cannot change a person's life truly to its core. We're going to go back to London. You're going to be happy now. Sadly, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
you know, it helped somehow what she did afterwards, of course. She did go on to live for another 25,
She died in 1941.
41, so less than 20 years, 18 years more or less. But yeah, no, it's this shadow, this darkness is ever present, but there is that glimmer of hope in that scene. And
There
just the
is.
openness of communication, again, that's also something you don't necessarily see with the husband being so accepting as
Yeah,
well
yeah,
and
that is,
welcoming.
yeah. That is the like the refreshing part
Mhm.
of this film. Even all of the men in this film are weirdly decent, all of them. Which okay, such a film filled with female misery, and every man is acceptably decent. Even Richard, in a way, is kind of decent, which I think it was an interesting touch. But one thing that I do love in the book and I do love in the film is the moment of realization from Virginia where she understands that Clarissa will not die, the poet will die, and how that
Yep.
mirrors herself when she understands that she's kind of killing Leonard in a way. Um, and when she understands that she needs to find a different way. And how that is mirrored both in Mrs. Dalloway and on Richard's story.
Mhm.
Um, and how Richard Adair is beautiful acting in this. It's a role where I did not expect to see it, but he's very good in this. But the way that he says one of one of the phrases that is on the Virginia Woolf suicide note for Leonard, which is, "I don't think that anyone could be as happy as we were." um, those little elements that connect, and then you have a fireplace conversation between Virginia Woolf and Leonard Woolf, when she says that the poet must die because you need to find something to attach life to. You have to have people finding meaning in life through the deaths of others, and this time through the poet. This parallel between book and film is very beautiful and very beautifully made, even if in a different way, in both.
Yes. And another part of it that I respect a lot, which is always a very thin line and something that feels dangerous and exploitative in other stories about suicide, is that this gets very close to romanticizing it,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't. And I honestly don't even know why that is the case and why I feel like that. Because it
I,
happens sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about it. Like the only recent example, weirdly enough, is a video game that came out called The Medium, which, spoiler alert, has to do about like trauma and whatnot, and it ends with someone killing themselves, and it's supposed to be like a good thing. Oh right. Oh no, another one that I thought it was like the movie Lights Out from a few years ago. Have you seen it? That one.
I'm not sure.
Who cares about Lights Out? But that was spoiler alert for Lights Out. But that one similarly has directly tied the malevolent presence to someone's life. And it's like the only way I can save the people is if I kill myself, and it's like supposed to be heroic. And it feels like it's the only option, and it's icky to say the least. It's like, it's sending a very weird message, especially when it's supposed to be a story about trauma and abuse and overcoming addiction and all those things. To have the person directly tied to those things be like, the best thing I can do is kill myself. And it's like, yeah, this day is saved. Woohoo! Great. It's tricky. So to have Virginia Woolf, the character in this case, talk about like the need of the death of the poet. And of course, she commits suicide, and Richard, you see him later on, a fictional character, but of course tied to real people and connected to Virginia Woolf actually committing that act. It feels warranted. I don't even know if I'm making sense right now,
No,
to be honest.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm
I
trying to
think.
be very gentle about this because it's a serious topic. It's not something to make light of course.
Sure. No, this kind of film, especially when we're talking about a film that is made for the Oscars based on a Pulitzer, it's very easy to make these kind of things very dramatic. And when
Hmm.
you make them very dramatic, you automatically kind of romanticize it. Like, and I said this before, that whole thing about making or portraying suicide as an act of self love or even of love to another person is a very dangerous line to walk on.
Hmm.
It's it doesn't make it less true, but it's very difficult to portray that without being exploitative or taking the worst side of it. That's fair, but I have not felt. Maybe it's because of the performance of Ed Harris, or
He's good.
even the way even the way he's portrayed to the film, he's portrayed as someone that is leaving this life one way or another, stuff
Hmm.
like that. But I can understand what you're saying, that this could have been like a complete disaster. I
Yes.
think it is not, but I can definitely see someone watching this film and looking at that scene and like, I don't like this, and I would not blame you by any chance.
Which surprisingly I've not seen, which is a testament, I think,
Yeah.
to the way it's portrayed.
I don't think it's also a film that has been revisited that much. It's one of those like 2000s drama with A-list casts that k- kind of outcrowded itself. It kind of felt it was lost between the noise of that time of the Oscars, and no one even picked it up again. There's some very, very big fans of it. Lillian Crawford, a journalist that we both love, absolutely
Yes.
fucking loves this film.
One of our
With
favorites, yeah.
which is something that definitely says something good about the film, because she has a very particular taste, and this is definitely one of her preferred films, which is a beautiful thing, I would say. Um, Yeah, I think the film is in good taste. At most times, it's in good taste.
Yeah, and it is easy to digest. It's not like I watched it. It's been a hard period recently, but primarily because of the heat. To be honest, just like being able to focus on anything has been rough. But even watching it late at night, it was thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah.
It is the good kind of Oscar bait, effective bait. There's a reason why it was successful then, why people have a good memory of it. I wonder if it will ever be reappraised or devalued over
Mm,
the years. I think also it goes to say that maybe because of the quality of the source material, but I remember the first time I saw it at Ares, I was like, oh, he's playing a gay man with AIDS. I was like, oof. And then it was the full movie. I was like, it was good. It was very much good hands, well written, well portrayed, which is something that not many, like, I know Philadelphia, Tom
yeah,
Hanks. It's like, and in that case, it's also explicitly a movie about
about it.
AIDS.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not a movie about that, but it is an element of it. And it is a physical, easily identifiable illness in a way that the other illnesses of the other suicidals from the other
Yeah.
stories are not. So there is also that tangible element of giving name and giving a specific spot to
Hmm.
the pain that the other two, well, that Virginia Woolf had trouble with over her life, but that Laura Brown identified very late. And I think how do you feel? Kind of like to start bringing this towards an ending. How do you feel about the final scene of both the book and the film? Like I'm ambivalent on how the movie plays out. The reveal of Richard,
Like,
like, oh my god, Richard the poet is Richard the kid. It's like they did get an actor, kid actor who looks kind of like Ed Harris. I don't think he's the greatest. He looks very
mm,
upset,
yes, he looks
which
very.
is
That old scene of him screaming and knocking on the window is very, again, two
very loud.
thousands, very
Yes.
early 2000s.
No,
Um,
Bob, no,
yes,
just
it's
running in the
groaning.
street.
It's like, okay, buddy, calm the fuck down. She's going shopping or killing herself, but probably shopping. You don't know.
But he
Um,
could sense it, damn it, he could sense
yeah, I
it.
mean, he's not the greatest kid actor, let's put it that, and he didn't have much of a career after it. So, I mean, that probably says something. No shade to kid actors. It's tough being a kid. It's
He
tough
was
being an
chosen
actor.
because he looked like Ed Harris.
Yes, that
And you
is.
just
It
squint a
was
little and
reverse
go,
engineered. Yeah,
yeah, you
this.
go like, I can see him
I
being.
can make it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, it's fine. He'll be okay. I hope he's okay wherever he is. But he's not the greatest as well. I don't particularly like the way it plays the ending. I'll tell you. I do find it particularly beautiful, though slightly gratuitous. The hug that Claire Danes' character gives to Laura Brown in that scene. It felt like a bit of nowhere, but I felt what they were trying to do, and I
She's
found it beautiful.
good. She's purity. She's forgiving her.
Yeah, but I did like the sentiments in a way.
It's cute. It's cute.
Though I have, which I still have, and I'll be completely honest, I think I really like the film much more than you do,
Hmm.
but because it moved me quite a bit at some points, but I can see completely there are some things that do not work, and this scene in particular is one of the big. First of all, the whole makeup thing. I think I know that it was quite of a thing back then because they tried with Julianne Moore, it didn't work. They get older actors to do it, and then it didn't work, so they went back to Julianne Moore after 1 year later or something. So they were having trouble doing that scene, and I had trouble watching as well. But there is some lines in that scene in particular, and Meryl Streep is also very good. I think Julianne
Hmm.
Moore is the least good of the three.
Yeah.
Um, but there's some lines in that scene where she's talking about regretting it, and why would I regret it if this was between I had to choose life or death, and I chose life. And there's some particular beautiful moments in that sequence that I did like a lot. If it's my favorite scene, no, but it's also not my favorite scene from the book. I will tell you, I don't particularly love the ending of the book as well. So I like it in sentiment. I just don't particularly enjoyed how it went on that particularly meeting between them.
Yes, yes, because even in the book, it's played as a reveal of like Laura
Yeah,
Brown is coming. Oh, he was a child of Laura Brown.
you
Everything's
abandoned
connected. What
her.
the
Yeah,
fuck? Yeah,
it's
you
like
get the it. All the gaps are filled in. It simplifies it. I, I don't know if it's intentional. Probably not. But even the Mrs. Dalloway ending is slightly underwhelming by design. Of like
yes, it
everything is
is.
leading up to the party. And in my mind, it's always like, oh, we're going to get so much about the party. It's like, no, it's like the last 20 pages, 10
Yeah,
pages of the book. It just
and it
like
just
fizzles
ends.
out and it just ends. So, in this way, you have that emotional climax of like post suicide. It's like, oh my god, the mother is coming, and you understand everything about the relationship and what happened with her. And these women now are together, and you've been reading about the way they've been united by Mrs. Dalloway and Virginia Woolf. It's cute. I think just the way that the book itself is written makes it work. I like the final lines, which are also present in the film itself, talking about the hours and
Yeah,
everything about
no,
that.
no, that part is very.
Um,
When I'm telling you that I don't like the endings, is like the meeting of them because I
the
still
yeah,
love
yeah,
the part of Virginia Woolf going to the water.
the
Yeah, that I
actual
like. That I like. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the very few parts for something that's so much about stream of consciousness of Mrs. Dalloway and going with the flow and the mundanity of life. That's the most like drama fiction. It's like we're slowing down now. Meeting of two women that you've been reading about for the past past part of the book, past 220 pages or so. Um, and in the film, I do think the makeup is fine. It's
It
not
is. It's
bad
just
makeup.
Julianne Moore. It's just it. You.
It's just Julianne Moore.
Uh,
I would have liked it so much if it was. I don't remember. I think it was. It's like Atonement. Yeah, that does it. But it's like you get Vanessa Redgrave or Ellen Mirren or some other old woman.
just
To
yeah. Just commit
get an
to it.
80-year-old actress.
Oh,
Get whoever you can. And just say, "Hey, I'm Laura Brown."
I
Cut
would
away
believe it.
to Julian Moore. It's like fine, fine. You're in the story. I think the makeup takes away from it. I'm
Yes.
glad we're slowly stepping away from that. I'm very happy that the de aging is not taking off in that
Please.
sense, which could have been very easy. But yeah, no, it's a good ending. I don't find it. I mean, again, like it's a good final confrontation, but it's not in either rendition the best part of the book in any
No.
way
No. No.
until it cuts back to Virginia Woolf,
Again.
and then it's just the literal bookend, tying it back to the prologue, tying it to the ending of her life, and the way she just keeps on inspiring people going forward, which is something that I also really like. Speaking actually of, it just popped up in my mind. Speaking of those final chapters, that before Laura Brown appears, like elderly Laura Brown appears in the book, um, Clarissa is just thinking about Richard's life and how he will continue on living as long as people keep reading his poetry. And she's also very much aware, which is amazing to think about for 1998. It's gotten so much worse since, of
Yes.
how just the non-stop releases of new books and new art and new media will just undeniably, for obvious reasons, make him die his final definitive life, because he was never the giant name that everyone knows, so he will be forgotten sooner or later. And that I found also to be very moving, slightly upsetting, but moving.
It also comes from Mrs. Dalloway because there's a particular moment where Clarissa Dalloway is thinking about how all life will move on even if she dies.
Hmm.
And it just ties back to it both to Virginia Woolf herself, though time didn't forget her, thankfully. Um, but it does tie back to the book, both to Mrs. Dalloway and the hours.
Yeah. And everything about uh, suicidal ideation, because that's Mrs. Dalby gets into that very nasty territory. Like, then what's the point of life and
Yeah.
living, and all of that, and who am I really? It gets, and again, that's just a testament to Virginia Woolf. Even though as a whole I didn't connect with it, there are those singular parts and singular moments where it's almost like when you're at the theater or watching TV late at night and you're just starting to doze off, and then there's just something that catches you. It's like, whoa, I'm awake now. I'm focused. I'm hyper
Yeah.
focused. Like, that was one of those passages um, that I found really, really compelling. And I like, again, how Cunningham inserts it into his work. Um, do you have any final thoughts then
I think
about
yes,
the hours?
I do, because I think that especially the film itself only works because of Philip Glass's musical score. I think it's so
Yes.
important, this musical score, because it just ties up all of it gives it almost like a literary feel to it. It feels very booky in ways. It feels like a story. And especially because you're following three different characters, but the music is pretty much always the same. There's not like there's some themes that come back through to different characters, but it's mostly the same. So it just ties everything on those notes of piano that go, and those slight moments of strings here and there
Yeah.
to convey some drama, because you do need the drama and stuff like that. But the way that I think this is just a much, much, much better film, mostly because of Philip Glass's. The way the Philip Glass's score kind of elevates the film, and it gives something to attach the three stories, and that hooks you up till you get to the end. And I didn't want to finish this without saying that this is probably the most important element of the film. And this, I mean, we go a lot to the movies, we see a lot of movies and a lot of films, all that, and we know that a musical score is very important, but rarely we would say that a musical score is probably the most important part in a film. In this film, in my opinion, it is. It's what connects everything.
Yes, it's the power of Philip Glass, I would say. And I have met people who don't like him because he can be overbearing. And in a way, I can kind of see that. If you don't click with his style, you're gonna have a bad time watching anything he's scored or just listening to his albums, which are also very good. Um, but I don't know. I'm very much, and maybe it's because of the movies I watched growing up that informed my taste. But I do love myself a good musical score that takes center stage. Maybe it's me watching Lord of the Rings countless times when I was a kid, but that's another one of those movies where the score makes the film. Like, it
In
can
a
still
way.
work, of course, but the movie is just like dark screen, similar to Star Wars. Just like, "Rah," and the music comes on, and then Lord of the Rings, the strings. Da, da. Similarly with the hours, what music do you like? How do you score this? Do you have like Chopin playing in the background or something, or Mozart like going full classical music? Maybe. Would it be as impactful? Unlikely.
Mm. Yeah,
um, he gets, and I do find him to be excellent at melodrama in a good way. I do generally like, even though I complained about the shouty parts here, I do like melodrama, generally speaking, and even everything else that he's done. I've said it many times in my life, never on the podcast, I think, but one of my favorite scores of all time is from Candyman. I know Mishima is amazing and it's like a 10 out of 10 score, but I love Candyman. And without his music, it would not be as good a film. Um, Same thing with the hours. So, yeah. Good old Philip Glass still. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to say anything because if he dies before this episode comes out, I'm going to be very sad. Um, but he did make the soundtrack to Fan Four Stick back in 2015.
I mean,
So good.
everyone's got to eat.
Everyone's gonna eat. It's like the last big film score he's made. Freaking Fan Four Stick.
Even you got tired of just drunk.
Good for him. Good for him.
Good for him.
On that note, the question, which I actually don't know which one you're going to go for, which is amazing. Finally, it happens. Sometimes I'm not sure. Which one will you pick? The Hours. Do you prefer Michael Cunningham's 1998 book or Stephen Daldry's 2002 film?
Not even I know at this point, actually.
Burning questions.
Um, I did. I love the film so much the first time, like so much. Like almost like irrationally love that film. I watched that film and gave it like
Okay.
a 5 out of 5. No notes on Letterboxd. Now I downgraded it a little bit after rewatch because it kind of I got some sense at some point. I think
You
I
saw
will
Meryl
say
Streep cry, and
I
that
saw
was
Meryl
like
Streep
half
cry
a
and it's
star.
like this is not for me. Uh, Nothing against Meryl Streep, she's amazing as always, but I think she's I mean, that scene is not necessary.
It's
That scene is just a complete mistake. I'll,
adaptation problem. This is anatomy of an adaptation. That's a screenplay issue. Like
yeah,
because you need the free women to cry, you need them to be emotional. I think it's no, it's not misogynist, but it is borderline sexist. Where one of the most beautiful parts of the book is, oh my god, the man is crying, and you have the women being strong, and me like, oh yeah, look at him cry. Ah, it's okay, I guess. Like not making fun of him or
yeah,
anything. And then in the film, it's like, no, no, we can't have that.
and
They also
she's
toned down the queerness a whole lot.
yeah, a
I
lot.
think I can't even remember. Does she even kiss Alison Janney?
She does
There's like
after
one kiss after they go in the
yes,
bedroom, right?
exactly that.
Yeah.
No, but it's very muted.
Mm,
It's very muted. No, I'll probably say the book. And just to be completely honest, I didn't read it in English. I read it in Portuguese, and it still had a lot of effect on me. Which sometimes the translation you kind of lose a little
something
stuff
gets
in it.
lost.
But this one I only got actually in Portuguese, and I think I'll take the book. Yeah, I think I'll take the book.
Nice. I mean, I
It's
also take
obvious,
the
yeah.
book.
This one is
It's
it's for
obvious.
you. It's obvious,
It's not gonna be a surprise twist or anything. Like actually thinking of Philip Glass and Meryl Streep
yeah.
crying, and now that I think
If I
about it,
had the book with Philip Glass score, oh, that would be a thing.
that would be amazing. I don't know if like with an audiobook it would be doable, but it would be amazing if there was a way of linking a book that has a great like film score attached to it, and
Yes.
as you're reading it, it organically changes tracks. I know there's some people. I don't remember who did it. I remember I knew someone who was very who treated reading a book the same way you would treat like watching a movie or going to the theater, where it's like I tend to be very much like I have always a book at the side, and oh, I
Hmm.
have some time, I'm gonna read 10 pages, 15 pages. This person would put aside 90 minutes, 2 hours, or make a meal out of it. I have my playlist. I'm gonna just sit down, start press play, and I'm gonna read the book, and
Yeah,
everything is just perfect. I think I need to try that. I think it sounds the equivalent of like a hot bath on on a
I would
cold
say
winter
so.
day.
Yeah, I
Just
would
like
say so.
treating yourself to 2 hours of literature, no phones, no just like reading, active reading. Um, and I think that could be nice, like reading the hours as the Philip Glass score is just like on a
Yeah.
loop. Maybe a bit overbearing after
Mm,
after a while. It's gonna
especially
get to
because
you.
if you can't concentrate that much like I do, I need to. I could not be listening to music while reading. That is 100%.
I cannot listen to recognizable music while I'm reading.
Because you
That's
just
why I
get too
like
invested on the music.
yes,
That's the thing.
yes.
It
If I put the
just
Philip
takes up.
Glass score, I would be like
Just
dun 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 dun.
it
It's
just
like
takes up
yeah,
the
that's
space.
yeah. Oh, the strings are coming. There they go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the bit. It's like no, you don't want that. You don't want that. Even though you read it in Portuguese, I know you've been able to find the original quote of your favorite
Yes, I
passage.
did.
What? Which one is it? I'm very,
I have
very
two
curious.
actually, and
Oh my! Oh
I
my!
went
Boy,
through this podcast trying to select which one I would say, and I will.
are they all from the same section? Are they
They are
both
from the
from
same
the?
character.
Ah,
Are from the
okay.
same character, but I will stick with the original one. So this is me reading Virginia Woolf, which is probably going to go very well. Um,
Beautiful.
There is true art in it, this command of tea and dinner tables, this animating correctness. Men may congratulate themselves for writing truly and passionately about the movements of nations. They may consider war and the search for God to be great literature, only subjects. But if men standing in the world could be toppled by an hill, advice choice of hats, English literature would be dramatically changed. Which I think it goes back to that thing of giving importance to the mundane and how that is very important to women because they are judged in completely different standards than men are. And the film very well, but sorry, the book very well portrays that. It portrays that these dramas that these characters have, especially Laura Brown's and Virginia Woolf, Laura Brown stuck in the like the suburban kind of housewife life,
Hmm.
uh, where
White hell.
making a cake is completely fucking up her life. And she just wants to make a fucking cake, which is so easy to do, like the neighbor says, and she
And the
can't do
kid.
it.
And it's
And the
like
kid,
everyone knows how to make
and
a cake.
even the kid is not a little shit, like most kids are. This kid actually behaves. Probably Stephen
He
Daldry's
loves his
film,
mother.
he loves his mother. He's very loving as well. But she's looking at him and she's thinking, "Oh, this little kid hates me." These things are given so much thought and importance that this particular passage really, really, really stuck to me. The other one is from a moment where you said that maybe my passage would come from that part.
Do you want to read it as well? Do you want to
I can
share
read
it?
it if you want.
Yeah, go for it. We
Okay.
have time.
She thinks of how much more space a being occupies in life than it does in death, how much illusion of size is contained in gestures and movements in breathing. That we are revealed in our true dimensions, and they are surprisingly modest. Hadn't her own mother seemed to have been removed suspiciously and replaced by a littler version made of pale iron? Hadn't she, Virginia, felt in herself an empty space, surprisingly small, where it seemed strong feeling out to reside, which comes
Damn.
exactly after the birds thing.
Which is amazing. That
Yes,
entire part was
beautiful.
yes. Yes. Wow. Yeah, we didn't talk about the cake when you were talking about that
The
part. We didn't talk
fucking
about the
cake.
cake. Which again, like the expectations put on a mother.
Yeah.
Just like, of course, you're a mother,
Of course you can bake a cake.
housewife. Of course, you can bake a cake. Everyone
So
can
easy.
bake a.
Everyone
You
can bake a
idiot!
cake. Yes.
And just the feeling of incompetence and of not belonging, just like fueling that depression. Again, it plays into that idea of every single day can be emblematic of someone's entire life. It's like, yeah, if it's like she feels worthless by not being able to bake a cake. That was and this I want to say maybe the first chapter, maybe the second chapter with Laura Brown, and that's when I knew I was going to love the book. Probably, I was like, there's something about the specificity of this part, and also the kid trying to be supportive, and the neighbor, she's being a bit bitchy, but unknowingly so, in a
Mm-hmm.
way where you just take it for granted. So many things are taken for granted in life, instead of understanding that not everyone knows everything. I don't know. It was great. It was great. Um, my passage comes. It's a borderline quotation from the scene that we were criticizing about Meryl Streep in the film, when she's talking about the happiness Clarissa, um, and just remembering the past. And she was younger with Richard, so I have the passage written down. It had seemed like the beginning of happiness, and Clarissa is still sometimes shocked, more than 30 years later, to realize that it was happiness, that the entire experience lay in a kiss and a walk, the anticipation of dinner and a book. The dinner is by now forgotten. Lessing has been long overshadowed by other writers, and even the sex, when she and Richard reached that point, was ardent but awkward, unsatisfying, more kindly than passionate. What lives undimmed in Clarissa's mind more than 3 decades later is a kiss at dusk on a patch of dead grass and a walk around the pond as mosquitoes droned in the darkening air. There is still that singular perfection, and it's perfect in part because it seemed, at the time, so clearly to promise more. Now she knows that was the moment, right then, there has been no other. And when I was reading it, I was like, Fuck.
I teared up during that. Actually, I remember it clearly. Being
It's
on the train and trying and start crying.
I was you told me about that. I was thinking, I was like, is that the part? Has it gotten to
Hmm.
Clarissa and Louis and Richard and everything? Because this got to me as well. This entire section, I
Yeah,
was I had goosebumps. And it's almost a cliche at this point. Like, you don't know you're in the good old days. You don't know which, like, what's the saying? It's like, you don't know the good old days until you're not in them anymore,
yeah.
or something like that. Um, but yeah, it goes to that sentiment, which again sometimes it feels weird, and this is like taking it as a bigger conversation before we close off, of course. That sometimes take a step back, and I'm thinking, like, I'm reading about 50, let's say 60-year-old Clarissa, and we read Solaris, and we read Cloud Atlas, like all those stories about like the grandeur of life. And then I take a step back and think, I'm 28 years old, and I wonder if reading all of those things can help in some way going forward in life or not. If having the knowledge of how things will feel, and they will be probably worse than they have been for many other people, considering the current state of the world, but just generally speaking, can it actually be helpful? Like reading something like this, and like the happiness that has been, and just like being trying to think, like, am I in the good old days now? Will they be coming? Can I think of the good old days? Maybe there won't be good old days in the way where you remember like true, genuine happiness. Or maybe there will be. I mean, sometimes when I think of good old days, if I think of you, for instance, I think of that summer in Venice 2021. I
Yeah,
was like, that was a good summer, like with friends, watching good movies, good conversation. You're not focusing on life. COVID doesn't feel like it's existing anymore. And it's just like for 10 days, that was happiness in a
yeah.
way. I don't know. I don't know if this is a larger conversation. Um,
I think it will
but
always depend. It's how do you say, you get from a book or a film what you bring to it, and I
right? Yeah, yeah.
think that is very much it. If you are in a point in your life where you feel like you're good with yourself and you're where you want it to be, or you're going where you want to be and all that, you will take from this kind of literature, like, maybe I'm living this now. Maybe this is my moment. Maybe this is the moment where I need to cherish life. And it but it's something that can be very different with the same book from someone that is not going through a particularly fantastic period, um, and will probably think, yeah, maybe those moments back then was all there is, and now, if you can project to the future, maybe as well, because cinema, books, whatever it is, sometimes have the power to make you feel like everything will be okay.
Hmm.
So even if it's not now, maybe maybe the feelings that these characters are feeling in the film, they're so beautiful. Maybe one day I'll get to that. But if
Can
you
always
have,
get better.
but if you have a pessimistic view of life as I do, you would expect to be, wow, I'll never feel that, and that is very harsh. I think the way you take literature will always reflect what you are and how you feel. So I don't think there's a right answer to it. You will take out of it as much as you're bringing to it, I would say.
Beautifully put. I don't think I can add anything to that, honestly. And before we close it off, of course, movie scene. What is your
Yes.
favorite scene from the
So
movie?
my favorite scene is, I'm I'm trying to, no, I will stick to the train
Okay.
station one. I stick to the train station one. I think that all sequence is beautifully acted, beautifully made. Um, the relationship development in that scene is beautiful to me, and it has a particular phrase, which I'm not sure if it's even like ADR or something, because the characters are facing, we are seeing the backs of the characters because they're leaving the station. But there was a particular phrase in it that really, really, really stuck to me, which is from Virginia to Leonard, which said, "You can't find peace by avoiding life." And I found that so profoundly beautiful, and so for a character that is so close to like the word is not give up, because even Leonard Wolf told at some point after the suicide of Virginia that she didn't give up. She just, it was just too much at some point. I don't want to use that kind of phrasing, but for a character that was fighting so much against herself and against life, um, that phrase, "you can't find peace by avoiding life," really, really, really stuck to me. And I think it's one of the most profound little kind of like
It's
bits of words put together that I've got in a while. And it's almost like a throwaway phrase in that scene, but it really, really stuck to me.
yeah, it says so much about how she views life and how he does as well, with so little. That was a good one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If only they didn't shout as much, would have been better. I'm joking. I'm joking. I have kind of a tie because, like, it's not a scene per se, but I do really love the opening montage
Okay, that was the one I
after.
was going to, but I was like, that's kind of cheating, so I will
Just like
not.
the three women waking up and just
Yeah,
like intercutting. It's just the match cuts and the
it's
things,
very good.
the pot and the flowers. It's like, oh, it's cinematic. Again, that's something that's slightly lost. It's well done, I think. Generally speaking, it's a very well made film. Stephen Daldry, British, has worked a ton in theater. He has that eye to things for the most part, where it's very theatrical, but not in a detrimental way. It's not
Hmm.
like some movies that feel like a theater piece brought to life. I think the variety of like camera moves that they
Locations,
have,
yeah,
locations,
yeah.
colors, every era has its own palette to it. I like that the more natural color palette comes from Virginia Woolf.
Yes.
The other two are more
Mhm.
stylized instead of being like sepia toned or whatever. Um, but the other part that I really liked, which is very much f- just doable for the movie. Sorry, it's the attempted suicide of Laura Brown as
Yes.
Virginia Woolf is trying to figure out whether she has
Mm,
to kill Clarissa or not, and the intercutting, and the moment when the room just gets flooded with
yes.
water.
It's beautiful.
It's like, wow. Again, music swells, and it's one of those moments that's very cinematic. I was like, that's a good film scene. Just like because every time I was thinking about like which scene was my favorite, I was like, most of the scenes I like from the movie are just also really good in the book.
Yeah.
So this feels inherently cinematic and just impossible to separate. It's not something
Hmm.
that you can do in the book. Just like intercutting. That's the true magic of the film. I will say, like the last comment on the movie, it's magical because you can pull off the intercutted editing that you just cannot do in book form. You can't have paragraph Virginia Woolf, paragraph Mrs. Dalloway,
Yeah.
paragraph Mrs. Brown. It's just like going from one to the other. Um, but yes, no. Again, I gave it a lot of tough love, but I just still really liked the film, and I really enjoyed rewatching it. This brings us to the end of our conversation on the hours. Thank you so much, Rafael, for joining me on this episode once again, talking about some good uplifting cinema and literature.
Again. Again.
If our listeners were interested in finding your writing online, where can they read you?
So I've been very lazy writing, but you can find me sometimes on fiocondutor.com.pt. It's in Portuguese, but as Nico does, just use the Google Translate. It will do. It will not make me look worse because I'm already not particularly good,
You
and
read
I'm
like Michael
also
Cunningham.
yes, if he was on very hard drugs. And on Letterbox, I'm not very much writing on Letterbox at this point, but I'm logging a shit ton of films, and I'm
Good
watching
films.
quite good cinema. Yes, I've been very well advised lately, and I'm watching particularly good cinema. So you can find me there at RJR Felix.
Amazing. Meanwhile, you can find me on everything at NikkiGround97. Pretty much, I managed to change the handle, so it's just easier to find me. Blue Sky, Instagram, Letterboxd, NikkiGround97. You can also find there links to my YouTube and Vimeo at Enjoy the Movies for links to my short films and various other projects I've made over the years. And of course, you can follow this podcast on Instagram at Anatomy of Adaptation Pod. Follow us there and stay tuned because in the coming weeks, depending on how the schedule goes, we might be doing a double bill of Stephen King adaptations of 2025. So stay tuned for that. We hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye.